Hey, what's going on, everyone? New World Order Survival Guy. Today's topic, we are going to get into the truth about prepping and food stability. Now, there's lots of different opinions on this topic about how long food could last, but with pretty extensive research and from my personal experience, I want to bring this to you. You do your own research. Highly encourage it. It's always good, always to do your own research. But through mine, I'm going to bring it to you. From my own experience, I'm going to bring that to you also. Now, there's many different ways, of course, to prep for food. There's freeze-dried, there's dehydrated, there's canned goods, there's home canning, there's freezer, there's dry goods, there's smoking, there's fermenting, there's salting. I mean, there's seeds. There's just all kinds of ways that you can prep for food. I'm gonna get into it and get into the longevity of most of these ways to store food. So we're going to get into home canning. Let's do that first. Home canning, get mason jars. Always want to use fresh lids. You can reuse the jars, but fresh lids with fresh seals is a good way to go to get a lot of your home cooked foods in jars. It could already be prepared meals or whatever, or you just want to store vegetable seeds, anything like that. Using jars is a good method. The longevity of it, just like any of these processes I'm going to be talking about, all depends on what you are storing, what type of food. So let's get into that. Obviously, you want to keep canning jars airtight seal. A lot of people store them without the screw-on lid. It really doesn't matter from my perspective as long as that cap is sealed and indented. So, I mean, they've been using this method for hundreds of years, at least 100 to 200 years, from my knowledge of home canning. You have a lot more options with this, and you know what you're eating because you know what you're putting into the jars. So, people make homemade tomato sauces and soups and all sorts of stuff. Put it in their own canning jars. They know what they're getting. They know what they're eating. And it's a real option for comfort food in your pantry, in your preps. Might get into that a little bit later. Let's move on to canned foods. Store-bought cans. Canned foods is an awfully tricky one because there are many different varieties, from soups to vegetables to fruits to meats. There's milks. There's everything that's in a can. Canned foods, believe it or not, can last many years. The key to canned foods, as well as the rest of the thing I'm talking about, is proper storage. Storage is the most crucial aspect of food prepping. The longevity of your food depends on how you do this. For store-bought canned goods, you must keep in a dry, cool, dark place. It has to have a steady temperature, and you want to keep it, wherever you store it, moisture free. You don't want any moisture. So if you do this, and this is go without to say, is like, for instance, meat, vegetables, and stuff like that, it'll last. It can last 4 to 5 years or longer if properly stored. Now, you want to be careful with highly acidic fruits and vegetables like tomatoes and pineapple and stuff like that. That's highly acidic, because that will seem to deteriorate a little faster. Now, if you keep a can, especially today's cans, where they're protected from, you want it to be protected from botulism and stuff like that, because just a minute amount of botulism could take you out. It is that serious. So you're only going to get, at best, a few years out of cans. Now, there's a difference between good and bad. I mean, these foods and these different methods of preserving foods or keeping foods, majority of these, the taste, the texture, the flavor and all this stuff is going to deteriorate, as well as nutrients and stuff is going to deteriorate. But can you eat it? Yes, you can. And it's perfectly healthy for you. Or it's perfectly safe for you to eat. So keep that in consideration, because you think times are about to hit where you're going to need it. I'd hold on to them cans a little longer if you practice safe measures. It goes with frozen foods. People think, 1 year, then you got to throw it out. That's not true. Actually, frozen foods can be kept and used indefinitely. They even talk about this on the USDA. And not that I'm giving props to the USDA, but at least they're admitting it. Frozen foods can be used indefinitely. Of course, depending on what type of food, 6 months to a year. A lot of this food can get freeze burn, but it's still edible. The quality will definitely deteriorate, but it's still edible. It could still keep you alive. Just the taste, the texture, and stuff like that will be kind of shoddy. Perfectly healthy for you to eat. So the only one that doesn't really taste good is old fish. Still safe. It's still safe to eat, but it's just really not a great taste, but safe nonetheless. Dry goods. You talk about beans, rice, pasta, wheat, all this stuff. This is kind of different between the bunch. For instance, flour. Again, you keep this in an airtight. You know how when you buy like a plastic package of pasta or beans, rice, whatever. When you buy that, you take it out that damn package and you put it in an airtight container. You can vacuum seal it into those packages. Just get that oxygen out of there. You want to put oxygen absorbers into whatever you put this stuff in, whether it's beans, whatever, and keep it in a dry, cool, dark place. And you're talking about pasta could last 3 to 5, even longer years. I even read some stuff where you can get it to 20 years. As long as you do proper techniques. With rice, I've seen it 10 to 30 years. Take the oxygen out, oxygen absorbers. Make sure you store any of these foods in dry, dark places. Now, what I like to do with like beans and rice and flour and stuff like that is throw a few bay leaves in it. And it prevents them weevils from sprouting and living and ruining your batch of food that you have saved. Now, brown rice has a lot of oils in it, so it tends to spoil faster. So when I'm speaking of rice, I'm particularly talking about white rice. Brown rice, you can get a year out of it if properly packaged right, taking out the oxygen and all the other proper techniques that I was speaking of. So wheat can last 20 to 30 years, no problem. Same techniques. That's all you have to do. I'm telling you, it's just the techniques of taking the oxygen out, keeping it under the right temperature, and you're good. That's the key to all this. Freeze-dried foods. Freeze-dried foods, basically you want to treat it the same way as all the other stuff. The thing is about freeze-dried foods, they take out all the moisture out of that food. So it's virtually almost impossible to spoil. You just want, if you want the freshness taste of it and not to reconstitute it with water when you're ready to eat it and it tastes stale, then you got to keep these proper seal techniques. Smoking meats. Smoking meats is a way to preserve meats that they've done for thousands of years. Again, vacuum seal these things. You can get a couple years out of it. You can get a couple years out of it. You do it the right way. I can't go into detail about all this because I'll be here for a month. But preserving meats is a good way to keep protein in your diet. When shit hits the fan, it does last a long time. You will be surprised of how long um, preserved meats can last. You also have salty meats. Put salt, put meat, put salt on top of that, meat, salt, and pack it down into an airtight container. And you're looking at a year, 2 years, even here more, just depending on what kind of meat, the fat content in there, it could last. Let's see, what else do we have here? Well, you have a root cellar. Not many of us have root cellars these days. A root cellar was pretty common back in the day, like grandmother's ages and before. They used it to keep potatoes and other vegetables, which greatly increases their life. I mean, you can stick potatoes, you stick it on your counter, it's just going to last like a few days, a week, maybe a little longer, 2 weeks tops before it starts sprouting up, getting soft and stuff like that. Well, you stick that stuff in a root cellar. A root cellar, you want it 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, about 4 degrees Celsius. And you can have it in there for 6 months, take it out, eat it, and it'll taste fresh. Root cellars, which is obviously underground, usually in the house or something like that. Some of the people had it outside their home and had our own cellar for that. But 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, it keeps vegetables for many months. And I'm talking about virtually all kinds of vegetables. It keeps them in there for a long time. So if you have some access to something like that, that is a great thing. And like I say, it doesn't take any electricity, any special lighting. You don't want light in there, period. Except for to see where you're going. Now you get to you want things in Mylar bags. Mylar bags helps keep out the moisture, condensation. You want oxygen absorbers, and a lot of stuff. You even want silicone gel packets. You want whatever you're putting this food in airtight. Like I say, if you get pasta, packages of pasta, take it out, put it in an airtight container, put some oxygen absorbers, and don't touch it. Mark the outside of the container or package or whatever you have it in. It's a good investment to get one of them the machines that suck out the air out of these packets, out of bags and stuff like that, and you can vacuum seal these things. It is a good investment. You get a lot of food that's not freeze dried that will last just as long as freeze dried with these proper techniques. Remember, always dry, always dark, always cool. Cool temperatures. The heat, the sunlight, everything like that will ruin your food. Period. Like a lot of these packaged foods, no matter what's in it, they're filled with air. You get them bags that's just like there's a lot of air in it. You want to take it out of there and put it in something that is no air. Extend the life tremendously, like night and day. Another way to keep food is brining. Uh, Brining has been used. I mean, you can use vinegar and certain things. You can use alcohol. It's a good way to do it. Even oil, olive oil, and putting them in canning jars will tremendously make it even longer keep. So some of this is basically no shit. I already know that. But a lot of people, especially this day and age, don't really know. And they're just thinking, like a lot of preppers these days, they'll buy a bunch of cans, right? And I made this mistake years ago too. You buy a bunch of cans, you're prepping, you buy a bunch of freezer meat and stuff like that. Well, they're not thinking that they have to keep rotating. And it's like, I'm not prepping to eat this shit now. I'm prepping so whenever shit hits the fan, it may be 10, 20 years from now, I'll have food. But, people find out too late, oh shit, I'm stuck with 800 cans of this shit that I'm not going to eat. I don't typically want to eat this on a regular day. I just got it because it's sealed and I can eat it when time comes. Well, if they knock the power out, your freezer ain't going to work. All that food is going to spoil and there ain't shit you can do about it. You better get it doing, hurry up and can shit. You better salt it, smoke it, do whatever you can to make that shit stretch. So another thing is dehydrating. Dehydrating food lasts longer than what normal people think. You can get years out of dehydrated food. For instance, fruits and vegetables. One thing you just gotta dehydrate the shit out of it. You don't need to freeze dry it. Just dehydrate the shit out of it. Once again, vacuum sealed packs, oxygen absorbers, cool, dry, dark place. It can keep for years. I'm talking about beef jerky, all sorts of vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. So what it says on your package when you buy it, if that's what you do, they just do that to cover their ass. They just, basically the freshest state where it tastes as they put it on the out in the market. The rest, you can use it from then on. They're just covering their ass from a lawsuit. But this stuff, food, lasts a lot longer than you think. There's so much preservatives and bullshit that they put in canned foods and stuff like that that it extends longer than you think. So don't forget about botulism toxins. It is a serious thing. Keep yourself safe, your family safe. Take the necessary precautions to, you want to smell the food. Always smell the food. Look at the texture. If it's sticking together, if it's slimy, don't eat it. If there's obviously any mold or stench or anything like that, don't eat it. Um, you get a lot of like cans that they used back in the day that, I mean, nobody's gonna be eating that shit anymore. Like, the lead cans and shit like that. But it you just use your own judgment if you want to eat it or not. I mean, the flavors, the textures, it's gonna deteriorate, but these foods will still be good. Um, you get meats and veggies and stuff like that. You're gonna get 2 to 5 years out of it when it comes to like canned vegetables, canned meat, properly stored. You're gonna get a lot of years out of it, more than one would normally think. Powdered milk, 3 to 5 years. I mean, that's it's powdered milk is kind of gross, but um, you can make cheese out of it. You can make yogurt out of it. You could do things with powdered milk that you wouldn't normally think you can do with it. Most people think, oh, you can just drink it or add it to some, or you could feed babies with powdered milk. But like I said, you can make cheese out of it. You can make yogurt out of it. You can make a bunch of other stuff out of it that you normally would with fresh milk. Maybe not everything, but a good chunk of these things. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about. Dehydrated food, you want to keep it at 70 degrees Fahrenheit or cooler. The thing is to keep these foods, even your seeds, keep them in a cool environment. Because cool is freshness. Cool or cold or even freezing obviously prevents bacterias and stuff like that from growing in it. And it slows down the aging process, keeps it from spoiling. Because bacteria and stuff like that love warm. So, hard meats, beef jerky, biltong is a great way to turn your meats into for the longevity. It tastes good. Once again, keep it in right conditions, and you're going to have meat for years. Power goes out, your freezer's done. Your meat in there, your vegetables, whatever, that's just done. So you got to think of ways that you can turn your fresh produce and meats into something that can last possibly the rest of your life, depending on how old you are. Freeze dried is the way to go, but freeze dried foods are so expensive. I mean, very expensive. You guys, if you're watching this show, you already know how expensive it is. It's crazy, but it takes time. And then with the food prices nowadays, and then they're putting that energy and stuff like that into freeze drying this stuff and then packaging it and all this. I mean, I'm sure they're trying to cut you the best deal that they can when you buy this stuff for the most part, but it is a costly process. So I mean, you can buy a freeze dryer. I think the only company that makes it is Harvest Right for home buyers, people from home that want to buy a freeze dryer, you're going to be spending minimum $3,000 for one of those and up. But for a home, $3,000 one, I think it's the 5-tray Harvest Right freeze dryer is actually pretty good, man. It's about the size of a little dishwasher. I mean, it's worth it, especially if you grow your own fruits and vegetables. You know, they can do a lot of crazy stuff with the freeze dryer, and that food will last forever. You're just gonna freeze dry the shit out of it, package it up right, store it right, and you're good. So, the only other thing you're going to do for prepping is the foraging. Looking for plants like I was mentioning on my show yesterday. And you ain't got to do shit. You just buy the books. They even have classes at a lot of these community colleges, which you don't need any sort of high school diploma or anything. It's just these programs that they have through there that anyone could do. A lot of these communities have these type of classes, especially if you live in certain areas where it's worth it for them to do them. Like I know they have one here in my town. I haven't taken it yet. You have a lot of these guides and these professionals that will charge thousands of dollars for these. But you go through your community centers, stuff like that, it's a lot cheaper. You'll probably spend a couple $100 or something like that. But, I mean, hey, it's worth it. It's worth it. They'll show you exactly what to look for, exactly what the lookalikes are that are poisonous to you. So, I mean, you don't really want to gamble too much on the guesswork. You know, there's a lot of good books out there that show you what to look for and what the slight difference is. Because they say there's a plant that can feed you and heal you, but there's a lookalike that's poisonous, but there's small differences in the plant that you can be able to distinguish what's good and what's not. So I have a handful of books, man, and I read through those quite frequently, because if food from a store or any other is not an option, you have these to at least sustain yourself and keep living. So take these in consideration when you buy and stock up on food for your prep, because there's a lot to learn. Like I say, I can't mention everything because there's books about this thick on every single little detailed subject I was talking about. So it just goes on. I just want to give you a brief front on that. I suggest, if you're into that, to research more into these individual topics of food prepping, whatever floats your boat. So, yeah, that's it. That's all I got. I should have another show here in a couple days. So, everybody have a good night. Please like, share, subscribe. New World Order guy, survival guy. Have a good night.